Alrighty. Oh, I need to, where's... Oh, no, it's already done. Okay, cool. So we increase it a little bit more. Alrighty, so... let's get this shit started. So far I have his silly little hat, which I mostly done. I just need a little top bit. A bit at the top around here. I need to get rid of that line. Yes. But yes, I need to, where's my helmet layer? And then I actually need my face layer. Should be nothing there. Okay, so then we're going to go back to the body. Okay, so far I have this. Hands coming along nicely, I think. Body's like okay. I think I'm gonna stick to this general shape. But I'm not here to talk about the drawing process. I'm here to just chill and talk mostly about oh god, this should be a little bit darker. History and, well, kind of my quote-unquote expert field. God, how do you do wrists? But yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about these guys, the conquistadors. You know, the people who kind of led the way for a lot of the shenanigans that would happen later on between the conquest of Mexico. Between the conquest of the Aztec Empire and the conquest of the Inca Empire in Peru and Ecuador, and the Aztecs were, of course, in Mexico. So you have these guys who, the New World is already discovered at this point. It has been known for a couple years at this point. So you have people like Hernán Cortés and his crew head off towards the New World in search of gold, God, and glory. The 3 Gs. So you're looking at people who are wanting to not only conquer the native peoples and steal their riches, but also people who want to spread the word of God through any means necessary. Now, most of these people were not nice people. I think we can all co-sign on that one. These weren't missionaries sent by the church to go and convert these native populations. These weren't people sponsored by the church in any way, shape, or form. These were just ordinary people. People who thought they could strike it rich with the discovery of the New World. So you have these people who, at this point in time, there's no concept of people other than the white man having a soul. So as of this moment, there is no precedent for a need to particularly give much care for the people who live in these far-off lands, exotic lands filled with monkeys and bizarre long-necked camels, or humpless camels even. So these people go out to, sail the sea, and they come across Mexico, right? The Yucatan Peninsula or thereabouts. They come with horses, they come with disease, guns, and steel. One of the most important events in North American history was the arrival of the conquistadors. Because there's no precedent for how to treat these native peoples, because nobody has interacted with them. This isn't a situation like the Muslims that had a couple years prior occupied Spain, and I think at this point they had just expelled them out of what we now know as Gibraltar, the little tiny. So if I was to draw, hold on, a quick little sketch of Spain, of, my bad, Iberia, you kind of have this little pointy bit. Spain does have something like that. Or rather, it would. So Spain is not that sure. So you have Portugal right here, but we don't care about Portugal. No, not for this discussion. We're talking about España. These guys are the main characters. So there's this little tiny little section down here that's really sharp. And it just barely misses Africa. Morocco, what we know now as Morocco. And what some people refer to this area as the Pillars of Hercules, because this is where people thought in antiquity the Pillars of Hercules were. And of course, the Atlas Mountains are called that because that's where people believe, the Greeks specifically believed, that, which are like roughly here, I want to say, was the residence of Atlas the Titan. But anyway. So you have these people who have just finished off quote-unquote, the Reconquista, the reconquest of Iberia. You have a unified Castile and a unified Castile with Aragon, with the now new Queen Isabella, Elizabeth, for English speakers. So you have this brand new queen, who's now, I think it was with Eduardo, who she married, and finally united the two kingdoms, which had been separated for a while. Had remained separate entities, minding their own business and sometimes being at odds at each other. Until the unification, thanks to Queen Isabella's leniency towards, well, I'm not sure if it was she had particularly agreed to it, since, you know, marriages at this time were most of the time predetermined by the father and by the needs, the political needs, especially of a country, as regarded by the current king or queen, if your nation was progressive enough to allow such a thing. Which, fun fact, was not such commonplace to have a queen as a ruler. If I remember right, one of the big protests from some of the Visigoths, who were to be ruled by, or by some of the people who lived inside of the Byzantine Empire, or Rome, the remainders of the Roman Empire, was the fact that Empress Theodora was, well, a woman. So not everybody was on board with being ruled by a woman. They thought that it would bring certain destruction to the empire, which, surprise, surprise, it did not. And in fact, to my knowledge, it prospered. But anyways, back to these guys, the conquistadors. So when you have these guys arrive in these lands, the first thing they are greeted by is a Stone Age civilization. A true Stone Age civilization. One of very, very few Stone Age civilizations. So the reason I say Stone Age, despite this being, you can be thinking, okay, so like, why is it Stone Age if it's the 1500s? Well, not everybody moves at the same pace. So you have, so you may have, yes, the conquistadors may be in the late medieval, early Renaissance period, but these people do not know metalworking. They have never in their lives molded a piece of copper into a arrow or a sword or something like that. These people use stone for all of their tools still, with one exception, obsidian. So obsidian is fairly common for the Aztecs, or at least common enough for them to substitute it for things like metal. So they never, not to mention their mythology kind of prohibits the entrance to underground areas, as that is literally asking to visit the undead, as you have the underworld, or you know, their version of Hades, hell, whatever you want to call it, being literally underground in caves. So anyways, these people have never seen... The only metal they have seen, really, is gold. Now, gold is interesting because it's very, very, very malleable, and it's pretty easy to work with. So these people have lots and lots of gold. Which is something that the conquistadors... Remember, these guys are pretty much your... Not your average Joe, but they're not coming from exactly royal blood or anything like that. These are people who do not much care for anything but money. After all, they've been in a ship for many, many months. And they are exhausted. They have just now begun to see land for the first time in what feels like to them forever. So they disembark, right, onto this new world. So these people disembark, right, and they're greeted by these weird people, because they were told, you know, oh yeah, these are the Indies, these are India. This is where you'll find spices and gold, and, well, they weren't wrong about the gold. So these people have lots of gold. And very, very simplistic tools. And to their surprise, no beasts of burden. So the Americas don't have... There's exactly one animal... shut up. There's exactly one animal that was domesticated, and that was the llama. So you have an animal that not only prefers to live in the mountains, which is bad for very obvious reasons, but you have an animal who also isn't being used for its meat or its milk or any of its many potential byproducts. Instead, you have an animal that pretty much is just used as a pack animal. That's it. It's just transportation. It's just transportation. That's all it is. So these guys come with something the natives of these lands are not familiar with, which is tamed animals, especially those living in the Aztec Empire, as they do not have any animals of their own. Hold on, I need to grab a reference. And these people don't have, so to them it looks like it's just an extension of that person. So you have these strangers come in, and so I want you to imagine, right? So you are this prehistoric, well, not prehistoric, but this Stone Age person. North American Stone Age person who has never seen a horse in their life. And has never seen facial hair in their life. So you are seeing these people with feathers on their faces, covering like their mouths and their chins and their cheeks, like some kind of bird, but it's only on half of their face, and they are on top of this four-legged creature with an excessively long snout. Why can't I move this up? Because I haven't applied it yet, that's why. So you see these people, or shall we say, perhaps gods? After all, you don't know any better. To you, they might as well be gods. They could be demons. You don't know. You've never seen anything like this. The closest you've seen are when your local priests or parents in your childhood spoke about the gods in your early kind of age. And so you think to yourself, oh, these must be the gods. The gods are visiting us today. Like, ah, shit. I didn't prepare for this. Like, you know, I don't have my ceremonial garb with me. I don't have much of anything ready. So there you are, stuck with gods in front of you. Just right there in front of you. And you're probably thinking to yourself, what the fuck do what am I supposed to do? What do I do in this situation? They never told us what to do. I wasn't prepared for this. Nobody was prepared for this. For the advent of the literal gods. So the gods are pretty much just walking in front of you. and they speak a tongue you've never heard of before. It doesn't sound remotely like the tongue you speak. It's weird and different. So you think this must be, the language of the gods. Because apparently they don't speak the same language we do. Which is a weird thought to think of, is that your own gods don't speak the language of their people. But whatever. So they momentarily grab someone to interpret for them. This isn't like in the course of a day. It takes a while because they need to teach someone to speak Spanish and understand the complexities that comes with learning a language, especially one that has zero connections to the language he has spoken all your life. So Hernan and Cortes and his group grab some translators from a tribe that they had already pledged their allegiance to, the Kingdom of Spain, in her efforts to take down the Aztec people. And he demands to see their emperor, their god, Montezuma. Now, Montezuma, being diplomatic, thinks to himself, no, I shouldn't just straight up kill these dudes. I should just send them into my personal chamber and have them and greet them as they were and welcome them to our lands, right? Unfortunately for him, that turned out to be the wrong move, as Cortés absolutely abused that moment of weakness to exploit Montezuma and his people so that he could have personal and close and easy access to the center. The center, of course, being the... Oh god, I need to move the arm into a different layer. The center, of course, being the center of the city. I forgot to make this into a different layer. So he goes and is taken to, the city center, to the palace even, where God himself lives. The fuck did I select? So... Okay. So he goes and, you know, he chills for a couple days while Montezuma, being none the wiser, Cortez is taking his sweet time, organizing his troops, letting them in secretly into the palace and its interior. I want it. But yes, so Cortez takes his time. And he invites his, you know, his lads over. And so he tells his lads, right, like, get ready. We're preparing for an invasion, of course. This was the plan all along. So he gets them ready, he prepares them, he arms them, both his native allies and his fellow Spanish conquistadors. And gets them ready for a siege of the city. Of course, I should have mentioned at the beginning, but this is just from my remembrance. This isn't going to be... Did I really... God damn it, I keep doing this. So he prepares his allies, Spanish or not, and gets them ready for the attack, right? So once he launches his attack, it's completely unseen and slaughter. The best weapon the Aztecs had at the time, to their name, was the Mahuacuatl, if I remember how to pronounce that right. And so, and the Mahuacuatl is essentially like take like a flat board, right? Like a 2x4 or something like that, right? And then take another one, and in between are these pieces of obsidian. Very sharp. It's not a continuous edge. It's a bunch of actually, I can draw this. It's like, so you have that's maybe a little bit too thick, but so you have maybe a piece of wood like that big, right? And then from here you have, it's kind of like a nail bat if the nails were really, really sharp pieces of obsidian that were more square shaped. And so this was a ceremonial weapon mostly to use to defeat worthy opponents. If you've played FGO, it's the weapon that Quetzalcoatl has. Of course, you would have it thinner on the bottom because it's a handle. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to wield it, not just look pretty. After all, you need to actually kill the enemy. So yeah. So that's the best weapon they have. Meanwhile, the Spaniards have rapiers, which are incredibly thin swords, or cutlasses. They have, you know, swords, steel, which easily just cuts through anything the natives have. And if that wasn't bad enough, they also have this rather recent weapon that to the natives looks kind of funny, right? Like, it's really long. It has this tube, and it has this little thing with a little hook on the end. And so, triangle here, and then a little thing here. Alright? So this is a gun, right? Like a rifle. This way outranges and overpowers any arrow. Because, well, an arrow... Because you have to keep in mind that these arrows would be made out of flint or stone or something similar. And they wouldn't even have... Well, I'm not entirely sure if they would have feathers or not. That's not what a feather looks like. So they might have feathers, they might not. Point is, yeah, you can get a arrow to be fairly accurate with some feathers. And sure, these may not be the most accurate weapons, especially from further away, as there's no rifling yet, and they're just firing literal balls. They're not like modern day guns that use this kind of shape for their bullets, with a little piece of ignition here, and then the actual bullet being here. So not only do these are much easier to aim and are much easier to use than a bow, compound bow. But these are also a lot easier to kill with. Sorry, my cat keeps coming in and out of my room. It just drives me crazy. So I like this a lot. For a rough sketch, it's pretty good. So anyways. So yeah, so these guys come with stealing guns. And as if that weren't bad enough, when these guys actually, like, you know, go back to their ships and rest, they left behind tiny bacterium. I think I like this side's more. Yeah. Not to mention, the weapons of the Aztecs seem to not land or bounce off of this gray stuff that they have. And it's weird to them, right? Because they're used to fighting people who are fairly primitive, no armor, just cloth. Cloth and belt. So when they try to attack them, and their attacks don't bounce, it really does seem like the gods have come for them. Right? I mean, what other explanation is there for such magical powers that seem to just inflict no wounds on them, right? And this kind of goes into the definition of a monster, right? If it does not bleed, if it does not react to your attacks, if it brushes off even your most powerful of attacks, what do you do right? It's unkillable. It's a monster. It's a demon. And so by the time Cortez is finished fighting, he captures Montezuma and takes all of their gold and leaves the city essentially with just a lot of people dead. A lot of bodies just hanging around. Quite literally sometimes. And that leaves, well, one of the greatest civilizations, one of the two civilizations in the entire continent dead. It's never going to recover. It lost more people. The Native Americans lost more people to the white man's disease than the white man did the bubonic plague. Like, and think about how insane that is. Like, the Black Plague wiped out a third of Europe's population. And here I am telling you that that was nothing compared to what the Native Americans had to endure. So these people mostly die not by the guns and the steel of the actual fighting, but by the diseases that were left behind in blankets and other miscellaneous items. So then that's the northern part of the continent taken care of, right? So then what about the southern? La Plata. Or Argentina, as it would come to be known. Was taken by one Francisco Pizarro. And this man would face a equally as primitive peoples, using stone tools and hides and furs, and shields made out of woods and furs and hides. No metalworking, right? Of course, aside from gold, because again, gold is super easy to just kind of do whatever the hell you want with it. But these people are different. They don't live in cleared out jungles. They live in the mountains. These people have chosen not to reside where all of the dangerous leopards and other predators lurk. They have decided to move to a place that is a little bit more safe, you know? So I just realized this shoulder's still within this shoulder, which is why it looks weird. It's fine. So, these people are also a little bit more advanced in one singular way. Oh, and they also don't have a writing system. Which is, you know, odd, given that the criteria to civilization are, excuse me, number one. Yeah, okay. Surplus, food surplus, aka farming, right? So two, you have to have specialized roles for your citizens, or for your people, I should say. As citizenry is something a little bit more complex. Number three, you have to have a written language. So this isn't something that the Inca did not have. But they did have something a little bit more interesting than... Or well, they were developing something maybe a little bit more... Something different, right? When we think of written language, we think of, you know... Maybe you think of the... hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt. What am I doing? That's the wrong way around. So you may think of the hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt, right? you may think of cuneiform, right? This is very early cuneiform. I don't remember my later cuneiform. English, or well, I should say Latin and Greek. I guess for Greek I should do a recognizable letter. Like, Alpha and Omega. Or maybe the, oh god. So the Aztecs had their own, as did their predecessors, the Maya and the Toltec and a whole bunch of other peoples. Had these intricate carvings that would be kind of on par with the hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt. I'm not sure what I'm doing, if I'm being honest. Right? So very intricate carvings into the stone. But the Inca did not do any of that. Instead, what they had is a counting system with string. So if I remember right, you would have something similar to what the Babylonians did. In Mesopotamia. So let's I think it was something like this would be like the hundreds place, this would be the tens, and then this would be the ones, right? So this would read 1, ending in 1, so 2, 3. 321, right? So the way the Babylonians did this was you had this as 1, right? That is a 10. And then big one of these, 60. So the Babylonians, and this is why we actually, in terms of time measurements, why they're all in base 60 instead of base 10. And base 6 instead of base 10, right? Is the Babylonians. And why there are 360 degrees in a circle. Because of the Babylonians. So if you were to have a tablet that said something like this, right? So I'm gonna keep this a little simple because it's a little bit hard to do it. But this would be 63, because you have a big 6 and then 3 little ones. And so in a tablet, you would have, most of the time it would only be 2 divisions, but this is your first 60, and then 6 by 6 is 36, your 360s, up to 360. And then, oh god, what's 60 cubed? What's 6 cubed? 6 times 6 is 36. What's 36 times 6? 6, 3, 18, 21, 216, and 2 zeros. That number, 21,600. So that's how they did it, and the Inca did something similar like that. And it is theorized, again, I haven't read up on this or anything, this is just something I caught in a number file, which I thought was extremely interesting while we were reviewing their counting system, was that there was a chance that these knots and their positions were said or spoken. So that means we were this close to having a writing system that depended not on stone, not on hide, not on papyrus, not on paper, but on string. And of course the downside of string is that it being made of fibers doesn't really last too long. It's the same issue with paper, which is why, you know, clay tablets or stone tablets are better for that. And of course, it would be natural too for that string system to be slowly transformed into the writing system, because that's how it happened in ancient Sumeria, right? In Mesopotamia. Was you had a system that was initially used to keep records of counts of grain or what have you, animals, etc., something. And eventually you get to a point where you are using it to keep record of stories, right? The Epic of Gilgamesh probably being the most famous, but you're also keeping record of laws. So Hammurabi's Code being one of the first pieces of written down legislature in the Western world. So I 100% believe that if the Inca were left to their own devices for maybe a couple more centuries, we could have had a much, much, much more interesting writing system than anything else we've ever seen to date. Because again, everything else had already pretty much been explored. You have the Aztecs with their pictographs, and the Western world with their alphabets. So really something that was managed by something as simple as string knots would have been very, very different to what everybody else had seen. Because even the Chinese and Japanese characters, right? Like, they were written down. Like, they're still characters. They're still very abstract, written things. These aren't things you physically make. You don't grab a piece of paper and fold it a certain way, and now all of a sudden that means a sound or a word or something like that. No, that's not how that works, right? So that's why I truly think it's a shame that we lost perhaps one of the greatest not greatest, but most interesting forms of writing before it could even take off. It's a real shame, you know? Man, this guy's got some meaty legs. But they look about right. That's all that matters, really. And speaking of things that matter, what was I gonna say? I don't know, I forgot. I think this looks pretty good. For first sketch anyways. For a rough sketch. Yeah, maybe a little bit thinner. Nice. Okay. Oh, this is... okay, it's fine. I can delete this. Not bad. I think another interesting aspect is that these conquistadors, right, whenever they came to the New World, they had just come off the Reconquista, so these aren't... they're not unfamiliar with war. It would have been pretty recently that they had finally driven off the Moors and the Andalusians out of Iberia. Not to mention their thirst for gold. But yeah, I think that's good enough for today. I am feeling rather sleepy, and I do want to play a little bit of FGO and Monster Hunter before I go to bed. So I think we made good progress. I didn't get to show me doing the legs and everything on camera, unfortunately, but I think it's coming along nicely. The cuirass especially. The cuirass? The breastplate. I really like the hat. Again, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do about the spiky part, but it's okay. I'll think of something eventually. It'll come to me. I'm probably gonna keep the pencil stash. So yeah, I still need to work on the hand. Which is, I probably need to bring it down a little bit more. so it rests properly on this, or maybe move it a little bit more dramatically towards here, because I didn't realize this is where its hips would be. But yes, hope you guys had enjoyed. I had a lot of fun talking about just random things. I apologize if I had a lot of random just moments of silence, but I was concentrating. And I hope you guys learned something new today. And if not, it's okay. In fact, if you have any requests for me to talk about something about Western history, as that is my stronger point, I have very little knowledge when it comes to the Far East. So when it comes to, you know, Europe and North Africa, the Middle East, the Americas, feel free to send it to me, and then I'll do maybe a little bit of research, and we can talk about it next time. But yeah, you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. Bye bye.